Bloomberg, the Trump administration expanded its trademark steel and aluminum tariffs to cover certain imported nails, staples, electrical wires and some downstream parts that go into automobiles and tractors, among other products. The decision comes almost 2 years after the administration implemented tariffs on imports of foreign raw steel and aluminum that President Donald Trump said threatened the viability of the domestic industries and therefore threatened U.S. national security. Some imports of derivative aluminum products would be subject to an additional 10% duty, while some derivative steel products would be slapped with a 25% tariff, he said. Argentina, Australia, Canada and Mexico were exempted from the additional aluminum tariffs. As for the steel tariffs, exemptions were allowed for Brazil, Argentina, Canada, Australia, Mexico and South Korea. While imports of aluminum and steel have declined since the Trump administration imposed levies, some derivative products have significantly increased since the imposition of the tariffs and quotas, according to Trump's proclamation. Trump said in the document that he had agreed with Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in his findings that aluminum articles and steel articles were being imported into the United States in such quantities and under such circumstances as to threaten to impair the national security of the United States. Trump has used tariffs and the threat of them to affect policy. Earlier this week, at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, warned European leaders of new penalties if they were not willing to compromise on a trade deal before the U.S. elections in November. Trump departed from the more conciliatory tone he had struck earlier in the week, once again highlighting the option of tariffs on imports of European cars and parts and claiming that he targeted China first in his trade war because an unfair EU is harder to deal with. They have trade barriers where you can't trade, they have tariffs all over the place, they make it impossible, Trump said Wednesday. They are frankly more difficult to do business with than China, and last month, Trump reinstated tariffs on aluminum and steel from Argentina and Brazil, nations that he criticized for cheapening their currencies to the detriment of U.S. farmers, and he again called on the Federal Reserve to loosen monetary policy. Linking his trade agenda with his Fed criticism in an early morning tweet, he said the two South American countries have been presiding over a massive devaluation of their currencies, which is not good for our farmers. The president's action amounts to retaliation against two nations that have become alternative suppliers of soybeans and other agricultural products to China, grabbing market share away from the U.S. Rural voters, including farmers, are a key constituency for Trump as he heads into the 2020 presidential elections. Trump has long grumbled about the dollar's strength and urged the Fed to abandon decades of precedent and act to weaken the greenback. The U.S. government's dollar policy has traditionally been directed by the Treasury Department. That has prompted fears that the U.S. could lead the world into an era of weaponized monetary policy. To contact the reporter on this story, Joe Doe in New York at jdo@bloomberg.net or contact the editors responsible for this story, Kevin Whitelaw at kwhitelaw@bloomberg.net, John Horney. Copyright 2020 Bloomberg LP. Let's block ads. Why?